The scary part isn't that most people are wrong. It's what most people are thinking without ever realizing what they're thinking. And if you understand one simple mental habit in the next 5 minutes, you'll start seeing mistakes, manipulation, bad decisions, and unnecessary stress that 90% of people completely miss. Not because you're smarter, because you're paying attention to something they don't. Think about this. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why you went there? Of course, everyone has. Now imagine doing that with your entire life, following habits you never chose, believing opinions you never questioned, wanting things you never decided to want. Sounds ridiculous, yet that's exactly what most people do. Here's what separates people who seem incredibly intelligent from everyone else. They don't automatically trust their first thought. That's it. Seriously. Most people think intelligence is about having answers, but the people who consistently make better decisions have a different superpower. They pause for a few seconds and ask themselves a simple question. Wait, is this actually true? That tiny question changes everything. Let's say someone ignores your message. Your brain instantly creates a story. They're upset with me. They don't respect me. I said something wrong. But notice something strange. Those aren't facts. They're guesses. And yet, most people treat guesses like reality. That's why they get stressed, angry, anxious over things that never happened. And here's something most people never realize. A huge amount of stress comes from treating assumptions like facts. Someone looks serious, you assume they're angry. Someone doesn't reply, you assume they don't care. Something goes wrong, you assume the worst. Your brain fills in the blanks, and then you suffer because of a story that may not even be true. The moment you learn to separate facts from assumptions, a surprising amount of anxiety disappears. The smartest people aren't immune to bad thoughts. They just don't immediately believe them. Imagine your brain as a very enthusiastic employee. It works all day, produces thousands of ideas. Some are brilliant, some are complete nonsense. The problem is that most people promote every idea without checking it first. Smart people interview the idea before hiring it. And once you see this, you start noticing it everywhere. Someone reads one headline and suddenly becomes an expert. Someone hears one rumor and believes it. Someone watches a 30-second clip and thinks they know the whole story. It's weird when you think about it. If a stranger knocked on your door and said something outrageous, you'd probably ask for evidence. But when your own brain says something outrageous, you often accept it instantly. Why? Because it sounds like your voice. And that's where most mistakes begin, which leads to another trap almost everyone falls into. They confuse confidence with competence. Think about the loudest person in a room, the person speaking with absolute certainty, the person who seems like they know everything. Our brains naturally assume they're intelligent, but reality is often the opposite. The more you learn about a subject, the more you realize how much you don't know. Real experts are usually careful, curious, open-minded. They're comfortable saying, "I don't know." And that's a phrase most people are terrified of because they think intelligence means never being wrong. Actually, intelligence grows from being willing to be wrong. Think about it. If you already know everything, why would you learn anything? The moment you admit uncertainty, your mind becomes flexible. And flexibility is a hidden form of power. There's another difference between intelligent people and everyone else. They don't waste energy trying to win every argument. Most people want validation. Smart people want understanding. They know being right feels good for a moment, but learning something new can change your life. That's why they're willing to change their minds when new evidence appears. Their ego isn't attached to every opinion. And that's also why intelligent people are often quieter than expected. Not because they have nothing to say, because they don't feel the need to react to everything. Most people hear something and instantly respond. Smart people pause, they observe, they think, and sometimes they realize that silence is more powerful than another opinion, because not every situation deserves your energy. Now here's the part that changed the way I look at people. Every person you meet lives inside a completely different reality. Not physically, mentally. Two people can experience the exact same event and walk away with completely different stories. One sees opportunity, One sees disaster. One sees rejection. One sees freedom. One sees failure. One sees a lesson. The event stays the same. The interpretation changes. And interpretation shapes life. This is why arguing rarely changes someone's mind. You're trying to remove a brick, but you're talking to an entire wall. People protect the stories they've built around themselves. We all do. That's why understanding people is often more useful than trying to defeat them. Most people spend their lives trying to look smart.
The smartest people spend their lives trying to become smarter. There's a huge difference. One is performance. The other is growth. One asks, how do I impress people? The other asks, what am I missing? One stops learning. The other never does. And here's something even more powerful. The people who seem wise aren't always the people who know the most. Often, they're the people who can step back and see the bigger picture. While everyone else is reacting to the moment, they're asking, what really matters here? And that simple shift changes everything. Imagine two doors. Behind the first door is certainty. Behind the second door is curiosity. Most people choose certainty because it feels safe, but curiosity is where nearly every breakthrough comes from. Every invention, every discovery, every improvement. Someone looked at something ordinary and asked a question nobody else asked. Not because they had a higher IQ, because they stayed curious longer. And that's the secret nobody talks about. Outsmarting 90% of people doesn't require a genius brain. You don't need perfect grades. You don't need complicated books. You don't need a photographic memory. You simply need the ability to step outside your first reaction and examine it, to question assumptions, to notice your own thinking, to be curious when everyone else is certain. Because the biggest advantage in a world full of noise isn't knowing more. It's being one of the few people who can stop and think, really think. The moment you realize that your thoughts are not facts, your emotions are not instructions, and your first reaction is not always the truth, you gain something incredibly rare, a choice. And that choice quietly separates the people who drift through life from the people who shape it. So after this video ends, don't try to remember everything. Just remember one thing. The next time your mind tells you a story, don't immediately believe it. Pause, look at it, question it, because the smartest thought you'll ever have might be the one that begins with, "What if I'm wrong?"